Well, we're live here, but I don't think she started recording here.
No, not yet. Just so you know, it's gonna use the microphone into here. So if you say something, it's gonna pick you up. Yes, it's gonna pick you up first.
Okay, good to know.
I saw you guys. I am so sorry. I didn't stop. I wanted to guys. And I was such a rush to get everything on the dog for the documents. You guys learned so much. Set them in shop. Sorry, I didn't get so we can still use it. Yeah, I'll probably just be a drawing.
Morning. Happy.
Oh, you sit down at all?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, I think.
Yeah. We are deciding.
Yes.
Good morning. Today, we have a little bit of audit service. It should be fun. It should be interesting. It should be challenging in a number of different levels. A couple of things as we are continuing to gather that I want to draw our attention to. One, there is coffee and water and all those kinds of things over there. There's also some snacks, some grapes and some other things like that. You are welcome to grab some of those, bring them to your table. We're going to have a pretty relaxed atmosphere today. Along with that, you will notice that there are big sheets of paper on your tables. Those are there for you to scribble, doodle, draw, whatever helps keep your brain engaged with this process. You are welcome to have at it. There was another thing that I had. Oh, yes. If you have a smartphone here today, you're going to need it. And hopefully everybody at your table has somebody who is competent to work a smartphone. We're going to take a survey here a little bit later. It's just a simple Google form where you just check off check boxes. But you will notice the orange pieces of paper there on your table. You're going to have to scan. You're going to scan those codes. Actually, the adults will scan the one that says adults, and then for people who are like my kids' age-ish, there's another smaller survey for them as well. So we'll be doing that later. Roger will introduce that. But first, I would like us all to turn to our bulletins. I'd like you to turn in your bulletins to the call to worship, or it will also be on the screen, I believe. Oh, no, we're doing first hymn. That's what it was. Thank you. We're going to stand and turn to number 545, Be Thou My Vision. We're going to do verses 1, 2, and 5. 1, 2, and 5. There are hymnals on your tables. 545. And now will you join together with me for the call to worship. Spirit of peace, quiet our hearts.
Heal our anxious thoughts. Free us from our fretful ways.
Breathe on us your holy calm, so that in the stillness of your presence,
We may open ourselves to trust and be transformed. Amen.
like you have already noticed, this morning is going to be a little bit different. Roger and I are participating in a class, which is where this service is originating. And Roger is going to give you a bit of an introduction for why we're here and what we're doing for this service. And then after that intro, we'll do number 401, this little item.
So this today is a non-traditional, very much so like me. This is a culmination of his last 10 years of ministry training in this class with multiple areas of application. But just for now, I need your help, and if you would endure me this endeavor. That's the reasons for today's relaxed setting. It gives us a chance of fellowship. Everyone is involved. It's all involved. And have a better face-to-face interactions and around tables help us with this. So your help and indulgence with this task will offer insight that we can use with our denominational leadership class. Alan is graciously loaning his insights and his electronic wizardries. Alan's also taken this class with me. He's taking it for credit as well as our interim district executive. Randy Yoder is the professor for this class. I just want to make sure that I have all my T's crossed and my I's dotted, as this is my final class, and it is for district leadership and church leadership as well. We just need to see basically where we are. themselves to the apostles' teaching and fellowship, to the breaking of bread and the prayers. Awe came upon everyone, because many wonders and signs, many wonders and signs were being done by the apostles. All who believed were together and had all things in common. They would sell their possessions and goods and distribute the proceeds to all as any had need. And day by day they spent much time together in the temple. They broke bread at home to make their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having the goodwill of all the people. And day by day the Lord added to their number those who were being saved. The characteristics of the vital and healthy, the characteristics of a vital and healthy congregation, things that are present, identity, who we are, looking at our mission, where we are with this, and the why. Is it clear to us or those that we outreach? In essence, the compelling vision was for the district denomination, what this has potential for us going forward as congregation and leadership. This past year in summer, Kim and I did some remodeling work on the house and did some siding, and we repainted multiple times, repainted trim. She was helping me on a lot of things, and it wasn't until this past summer that I realized I handed her my glasses, and they were all sweaty and covered in overspray, and she hands them right back to me, and they're just like messy, like she spit on them and just, like Jesus in the mud, and rubbed it on my glasses and handed it back to me. And part of the thing I do a lot is take my self-inventory. For the last 17 years in recovery,
Tell me if it's
one thing I've learned to do is take my inventory.
So I need to do a little extra to make it.
I noticed that many times we work together, then shortly after something happens, and it starts going downhill real fast. So this time she handed me back 30 glasses. My wrong vision, it wasn't because of her lack of efforts. She wasn't gaslighting me. She was trying to help. She wasn't wrong, and I wasn't right, of course. So again, for me, I need your help to see what I'm missing. So the QR codes are first surveys, and you have two to choose from, and those are just important. We promote from within, and we're all adventurers. We all have voices, because we all have intrinsic value. One, we see where we're at, and this gives us a point of reference. Taking a good inventory is healthy. It's like a business asset liability audit for insurance coverage. Again, it's for your own well-being, it's for your best interest. Being clear about our identity, purpose, and mission. These, are we enthusiastic about being Jesus in the neighborhood, in our local community and world? Two, need to establish common terms helps to identify correctly what we're talking about and referencing. Establishing common language helps to tell the mechanic if the noise is a bang or a tang or a bump or a thump. A correct identification instills the correct issue or correct problem being fixed on your car. Coming with it, pulling to one side or something. The mechanic wants to ensure that he's fixing the actual problem and that you're addressing and not the 4 or 5 other problems that you could actually be having with your vehicle. Correct vision helps us see, and it gives us, so we can see a place, a trajectory of where we want to go. It also allows for adjustments to our course. Coming from here, moving to there, going from here, moving to out there. We get to see where we're going. Clear glasses, make sure that we hit all the points of interest. If you're looking at it as a roadmap of a place we're trying to go, and we have all these points of interest that we want to hit along the way, this restaurant here, that place over there, or this thing here, in order to make sure we hit all those spots and those places, it helps to make sure that we have clear glasses, the windshield's clear so we can see where we're driving. The reason for the survey are just as multifaceted as we can allow our imagination to run with. But I, or me, can only lead you, the congregation, where you want to go. Again, I appreciate your help. This is again, something so I can finish my class. It's also for Alan, for class, credit for Alan's book. So the reason for asking the youth to participate in this, is we want to know from the youth, where do you want your church to go? Where do you see need? Where would you want to be involved in when you, as you come of age? Where do you want us to go? Jesus tells us to come with a beginner's mind or the mind of a child, to come as children. So what are our children tell us to do? Alan has been speaking of dying well, and for there to be resurrection, there has to be death and there has to be dying well. And that means change. During change is acceptable, and that's obviously an acceptable response as well as lamenting and weeping, mourning for what was. Using a seasonal analogy, if you're planting crops, you plant it a season ahead of time. You test the soil, you see where the soil is, what needs to be done to the soil. Sometimes a lot needs to be done to prepare the soil for the next crop. Sometimes a little needs to be done. The only way to do that is by doing assessments. Of course, we need to mourn well, but then we need to get up and we also need to get to work. There can be much to do, or there can be a little bit to do. It just depends on, again, using the farming or planting analogy, using a soil assessment test. Much like these tests today. Our church needs to see where we are, then we can share with our larger denominational leadership. See, I'm doing the same personal assessments. I've been doing it every year for the past 17 years. My life looks a lot different than it once did. I too am looking at what is and what's left and where to go from here. As I shared, I'm coming this close to being done with something that I've committed very much time and a lot of effort to. I'm way more mature in my Christian walk than I was even 10 years ago, and than I was even 17 years ago. You all are healthy people doing healthy ministries. I've just been trying to showcase how much this information will provide insight for our leadership to. As these slides show, the structure of our church ministry is the cycle of church progressions during its life cycle, in your own life. Excuse me, in my own life, I've had to die to a way of life that no longer serves me. I'm no longer able to do tasks so I'm exploring what I can do, much like the church, much like we're doing now. And this isn't to install mass hysteria or panic. The American church has been in decline from the heyday of the tent revivals and Billy Graham on 2 or 3 channels. We are where we are, and it is what it is. That is a place of indifference, quite to the contrary. We care much. The last few years have been a time of unprecedented loss in leadership in our congregation. Our deacons ministry is the first assignment of the early church, and here it's skeletal at best. We've had multiple pivotal people on the varsity team who have been drafted to the big league. To use a sports analogy, we still have seasons to play, and we promote from within. Our structures needing rebuilding or revitalization. We cannot see all the issues with dirty lenses. We can't articulate the things we see without common language based on a base of communication in common terms. So this is why we're doing what we're doing today. Plainly, so this can be the most brethren thing I've done, not the most Roger thing I've done. So again, I need your help in keeping me out of the weeds and keeping me out of right field with the dandelions grow. So again, and these QR codes will be shared later today here at the tables we'll have a chance to everybody to go through and have an analytical voice at it, or look at it also.
So, if you hopefully have been, are beginning to figure this out, the way, if you're not familiar with QR codes, the way this works is you want to get out your phone, yes, get out your phone, and open up your camera, usually, and then you point that at the square, and it should recognize that that is a QR code there and give you some sort of pop-up to be able to click on the link. And when you do that, it'll take you to the form to fill out. There are, for the adults, there are 12 questions. 12 questions, I know, like going back to school again. They are 1 through 5. Does this statement sound like us, or does this statement not sound like us? 1 to 5, yes. This church, us, this congregation. We are talking about Wichita First Church of the Brethren. If you want to put a comment, you can. You do not have to. The main thing is to check one of the boxes and then hit the next button at the bottom and then continue on. Finally, it says submit at the end of it. The kids one, which might basically be this table, has 6 questions. Same deal, pick 1 through 5. Does it sound like us or not? And then get through that and submit. And you should be able to do another one after you are done. If you want to pass the phone around, and if there's somebody at your table that looks like they don't know what we're talking about, go for it.
Thank you, Roger. I'm not
Yeah, we'll take about 10 minutes here for everybody to fill out their QR codes, the survey, and also we will show you some results of that here shortly, later in the service. And then we'll bring you back for the offer.
Just an FYI, we're able to not have.
Okay. Thank you. It's probably not fixable at the moment. No, it's, yeah, it's supposed to be.
Usually, no, not usually.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and realistically, everybody was tracking yesterday. There was a QR code on the floor.
We had
It was weird to us. I'm like,
Right.
well, I did a lot of how much would potentially have cell phones in. Right. Those are such an easy way to link people to your business.
Pick 1 through 5, and then this bottom will go next.
Yeah, we wouldn't scan the QR code. No, I saw it.
Right. Although the last thing I'm gonna do is get my phone.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you don't need to put any comments if you don't want to. Oh, good.
That's how I did that. It's either no comments or maybe a couple photographs.
You do it.
I can move the camera. Here, I'll get your face instead.
Stop it.
Marilyn's probably laughing on the other end.
Yeah.
The amazing Amazon. And
I already did it. No, I just did it. Kid version is shorter.
Just bypass.
Give it a go.
QR code up to the camera and see if she can take her camera in.
Oh wait, were you saying to hold one of these up?
Well, I don't know if it would work.
I'll try it.
Well,
Because then when she's watching it, she can scan it with her phone.
Wait.
actually,
And then to finish it up, you feel the need to stretch your legs. Again, we have refreshments in the back, both sides. As you're making your way to the office.
Wait, could I?
It took a while to focus. It didn't work very well.
yeah, this should be.
Hang on, Molly. Leave it there. Hold it up for a little bit longer. Just to make sure you get your phone out.
Okay. Is that good enough?
Yeah, have her, did she scan it off on the screen? Did she watch it on YouTube?
She's watching on YouTube, yes.
On her phone?
She can also scroll back in the stream and pause it. She could pause it.
just a quick question. Raise your hand if you have already completed the survey. Raise your hand if you're still working on it. Okay.
Half and half.
Keep on going. We're good.
There's no pictures.
I put the QR code. There's no- It's called bait switch. It still works.
Okay, good.
Well, I can't.
We'll have to sign
Thank you. That's right. And you can say.
Should have been.
That's what I said. I'm very familiar with that. 25 years on it.
Except for when you married, right? You were right.
Yeah, but only because she told me to make that.
There's no such thing as the high road.
Remember, according to the woman's rule, the woman always deserves to take the
Hey, Alan,
and then the rest of it.
question number 8 is not allowed.
I saw that.
Okay.
You wanted to ask something?
Yeah,
Because
I had some clarity. I wanted.
so different. Oh, I just saw that. That's what I thought. Certainly monkey won't cooperate. Yes, ma'am. Would you like some dots? You might. You definitely need dots.
Are we still working? Raise your hand. Still working?
I'm gonna not give comments now. I'm just gonna answer the dang question.
And the most important, on the table, it has paper, and there's pencils, and there's crayons. That is for everybody's artistic ability. To draw, shade, whatever.
All right, I'm gonna start bringing this back together for our offering time. Thank you to our church family for continuing to support the ministry of this congregation, both financially and physically through our time and our talents. We give thanks for the offerings that are being made as we speak. You may take your donations to the donation box at the back of the sanctuary, back of the fellowship hall today. You can send it to the church office, and you may give through the links online, or using the QR codes in the bulletin, which you should now know how to scan a QR code. The link information is provided to those watching on Zoom or YouTube. May we be people of prayer who share our joys and concerns, our passions, our sorrows with one another and with the Lord. Would you join together with me for prayer? Dear God, we know you live among us, calling us to share life and love with all creation. Bless the gifts we bring before you, that they may be signs of your life, hope, and love. Amen. In our class, part of the assignment that Roger and I were tasked with had these two tools for assessment of our congregations, one of which was the Healthy and Vital Congregation Survey you just took. The other one is looking at a resource called the Congregational Life Cycle. And this is, if you look on your tables, there's a document that looks like this. You can grab one of these. I'm going to take us through this so we can hear it and we can see it a little bit. And then, after I have brought us through understanding this and reading it, you will notice that on the wall over there is a chart with the Congregational Life Cycle on it. You will also notice that on your table there are little sets of sticky colored dots. What we're going to do after we've gone through this is we're going to take a couple of minutes for everybody to stand up and head over there and put a dot on that chart for where you think our congregation is in the congregational life cycle. Yes, This is some serious reflection here. So a couple things on this sheet. First of all, to understand what's going on in here, you will notice that there is this arch. It is using the language of a biological life cycle or a human life cycle. But it's to talk about local congregations. So we're talking about our congregation here. So there's birth, infancy, adolescence, prime, maturity, empty nest, old age, and death. That's the language that it's using. You'll also notice on the top there, it says there are focus areas. In each of these stages of life, there are 4 focus areas: vision, relationships, programs, and structure. You will notice that below that, there's a little bit of code on which of those focus areas are most dominant in that particular stage of congregational life. So it's helping to do some assessment of what is really where the attention and the energy and the focus goes at any given stage of life. Now, you can open it up and follow along, but hang on. I'm going to go fairly quick so that we can have some time to chew on this and reflect on it. And then also after we sing another song in here, we are going to have some time for open reflection and sharing for both the congregational life cycle and as well as the Healthy and Vital Congregation Survey. So when congregations are born, they start off in the birth stage, the church planting stage. This is a stage where vision is the most dominant of the focus areas, but relationships, programs, and structures are not quite developed yet. This is a stage where the congregation is living out its mission, purpose, and values. It's got this vision in place, and that's the main thing that is driving it. That's where the energy comes from. They engage in a lot of activities, but not necessarily planned or strategic ones. Characteristics of the birth stage are that they seek to establish healthy patterns, new and healthy patterns of worship, evangelism, discipleship, ministry, mission, and growth. The leadership team is integrated around gifts and skills of the founding pastor primarily. There's a high level of vision and energy. Dependent relationships within the church there's a dependent relationship with the larger church planting organization, an agency, denomination, etc. There's a lot of flexibility with structure and leadership styles. However, all is not sunshine and roses. There are growth barriers that come due to the vision of the type of church that it is. When you have a clearly defined vision of who you are and what you're doing, that also means that some people are not interested in that vision. Next, churches move into the infancy stage. By the way, let me take one step back here. When I talk about these stages of a life cycle, we're often talking about years, decades, generations moving between these different life cycles. So this is not always a very short-term kind of thing. Moving into the infancy stage, vision and relationships are the dominant ones in this stage, while programs and structures have not been fully developed. The congregation energetically lives out the vision that God's given them. Relational activities are more likely to begin to represent an intentional plan. Some congregations begin to take a longer-term look at process and programs in this stage, but structure is still informal and developing. Founding pastor may or may not be with the congregation at this point in time. Characteristics in this stage are that they moved out to an independence from the planting organization. Relationships within the church fulfill the strategic spiritual vision. Focus on intentional relationships and developing a sense of community with people who are coming together to form this new community. Identity and belief systems of the congregation continue to emerge. Grounding of members and regular visitors regarding the vision, purpose, beliefs, and values. The congregation is active inviting people and assimilating them into the fellowship, care ministry, and mission of the congregation. There are specific ministries that begin to develop, and the style of worship tends to become more defined. Then churches move into adolescence, where vision, relationships, and programs become the dominant, but not quite the structure so much. Hard work is starting to pay off. There's a lot of success in programs and ministries and activities. There are signs of qualitative and quantitative success. Yes?
You use programs now about 3 times.
Yes.
Can you give an example of what a program is?
Sure. On the front page, again, on the focus areas, under vision, there's things like Leadership, mission, purpose, core values, and beliefs. Relationships are things like discipleships and experiences and relationships between people. Programs are things like services, activities, events, ministries. Structure is like the administrative stuff, management, accountability, resources, systems, etc.
Okay.
Does that make more sense?
Yes,
Sorry, I blew past that real fast.
That's all right.
And yes, if something I'm saying doesn't make sense, please raise your hand. I realize this is going real fast. When churches are in the adolescent stage, yes, there's a lot more task orientation from the leadership and membership that does create energy, but there is also, just like normal human beings, adolescents can bring on emotional extremes, awkwardness, and even competition. It is very much that kind of life. There are beginning to be formalized management structures. Congregations raises the quality of programs. Competition and conflict, however, can arise over the vision, the purpose, and the goals for the church. Awkwardness with the infusion of new people and resources, staff and facilities issues emerge. Unrealistic idealism and emotional extremes regarding the ability to meet goals can arise. The congregation works harder to assimilate new people who connect to the church. There's a deepening of spiritual and community relationships. However, this is a time when things get difficult. The congregation will consider starting a whole new life cycle together rather than working through some of those issues and moving to become more of an adult congregation. Fourth stage is the prime stage. This is where everything is kind of firing on all cylinders. Vision, relationships, programs, and structure are all dominant. There's efficiency and effectiveness, deeper resource base, congregation self-esteem increases. Congregation begins to show pride in its success of ministry. It's clear about vision and shares broad ownership within the congregation. It's positive about its future, feels like it can accomplish anything that it sets its mind to, as long as it's in accord with God's mission. Characteristics here are that people are joining the congregation with increasing number of people involved in intentional discipleship ministries. Spiritual growth is occurring in the congregation. Worship programs, ministries, activities are successful, both quantitatively and qualitatively, like number of people involved as well as what's happening in those programs. Formal structures work well, often redesigned to match the size and complexity of the church. There's a flexible learning environment that strengthens communication, decision-making effectiveness. Congregations, however, begin to also age with increasing older adult populations, but there's still high morale, strong sense of vision, core values, teamwork. The congregation feels satisfied with things, they're mobilized, making significant contributions to the kingdom of God, make new plans for staff, programs, missions, and so on. There's an influx of people who contribute that also contributes to an influx of opportunities for conflict. After the prime stage, we move into the maturity stage, which is where vision starts to fade away, but relationships, programs, and structure are still the dominant things. The interesting thing about this stage is basically this is the stage where just when your church has gotten everything figured out and everything is working and you go, okay, we've made it. The irony of that is the point you take that breath, you've already moved into the maturity side, which is on the decline side of the life cycle. It doesn't feel like it, but that's where it's already started to happen. Begins to take success and vision for granted, assuming it will always be present and dominant. Programs may rise to the greatest level of quality during this stage. The momentum created during the prime stage continues to carry programs, activities, and ministries towards operational excellence. Resources are greater than they ever have been. Administration and organizational structure are primary initiators of actions of the church. Characteristics here is that the church is beginning to be more passive than active, though still successful in many areas. It's no longer about clear vision, beginning to lose some focus. The church's past keeps the church moving forward with a positive spirit. Intentional discipleship ministries are high, spiritual growth is occurring. There are not as many new people connecting to the church as in its prime stage. Worship and several programs are still considered excellent. The formal structure works well and controls the movement of the church. In meetings, agenda items dominate rather than new initiatives involving risk. There is no felt need for change in this stage. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Finances have never been better though. Senior adults are the fastest growing group in the church. Children and youth have plateaued and declined. Morale, however, is also beginning to decline among several selected portions of the membership. After the maturity stage comes the empty nest stage, where relationships and structure become the dominant. Vision and programs have begun to fade. The management of the structure is what controls the congregation. And the lack of intentional effort to envision moves the church into the empty nest stage. The church holds on to its past. Members begin to forget that it was an empowering vision that helped them realize their greatest potential. A few people realize what is happening and begin to press leadership and respond with greater zeal to the opportunities facing the congregation. Also, it's worth noting the relationships here tend to shift from building relationships with new people to maintaining relationships among core group people. Characteristics in this stage are that outstanding programs lose quality due to a drop in gifted and skilled people. There are efforts that are redoubled because programs decline in quality. Attendance is down, financial growth is stopped, confidence in the ability of the pastor to lead the church is diminished. People are convinced it's a matter of commitment. You know, we just need more hard work. If those other people would just work harder, it's requested from all. Attendance at events other than worship becomes a sign of people's commitment. Programs become functional attempts to provide projects and activities for members, not necessarily for community. Relationships have become more closed and exclusive. Power and authority are more guarded. Congregation is maintained using efficient business practices. Nostalgia eventually turns to disappointment and blaming. The atmosphere can be one of conflict. Thoughts are to get back, not move forward, but to get back to the way things used to be. Long-term members begin to feel that their congregation is no longer a good place to invite new people to, but yet they still desire to be a vital congregation. Then we have the old age stage, which is where structure is the dominant version, or dominant of the focus areas. The other areas begin to fade away. Maintaining the structure receives the primary focus of the congregation. Shared sense of ministry is lost and little attention is given to the mission of the congregation. There can be a strong sense of maintaining one's turf, personally or corporately. Rules and policies are help to set boundaries, and encroachment is met with hostility, defensiveness, or suspicion. The early stage of old age may begin when people express excitement about making another major effort to turn around the congregation. They look forward to revitalized and new programs that will attract newer, younger members. The congregation seeks a new era of transformation, change, transitions, and new ideas are said to be welcomed and supported, which is believed by newer members and leaders. Many long-term members desire qualitative and quantitative growth that is in harmony with the past. Efforts made to renew the congregation, but not sustained long enough to bring about transformational change, may result in disappointment and despair. Leaders find themselves struggling with issues of congregational resources, facilities, finances, volunteers, staff, etc. The congregation may financially support outreach programs if money is not an issue, or provide the facility if it's in relatively good shape to incubate a new ministry or program, using a building to support other programs coming in. Homecomings and anniversaries play a very important part of the congregation. The congregation is at rest in this later part of the old age stage. Worship is primarily full of memories. The congregation becomes a preaching station. or a chaplaincy ministry, meaning pastoral duties or leadership duties centered around things like weddings, dedication, funerals, etc. of members and their extended families. The congregation is afraid to take risks that might diminish its resources. Relationships extend primarily to people who have been long-term members of the congregation, extended family, and long-term friends. And then at the end, we have the death stage, where structure is the only thing that is present, and it's the small s here. Vision, relationships, and programs are no longer present. The role of structure is brief and confined. The purpose of the structure for a congregation in this stage is to provide oversight for the congregation's resources. Long ago, the congregation had a complete loss of memory about the vision which gave it life. Memory exists around the management of resources that carry the church. The desire is gone to meet regularly, to worship, engage in spiritual growth activities, and actively organize for fellowship and mutual support. Congregational life dies when these three do not exist in some form. Congregations in the late stages of old age are unlikely to experience a positive, successful future. The death stage may try to escape death by merging with another congregation or relocating. However, such action is usually out of survival rather than from an intentional, passionate vision for the future. So, first of all, everybody take a breath, because I just talked a lot. My voice is tired, I'm sure your ears are tired too. First things first, are there questions about understanding these descriptions? Yes, Kathy.
I looked at,
Hold on a second, Kathy, we've got a microphone. Roger, you want to bring that? Get up the turn it on.
I looked here on the first page where it was, this document was created, and then it said that it was reformatted 2023. In reading through the whole thing, I don't really see us anywhere in here, because I think when this was written, it didn't take into account the experience that we just had with COVID.
I agree.
And I feel like that was a death in itself for all churches everywhere.
All right, so Kathy, I'm going to stop you for a second. We are going to have a conversation about this shortly. The question right now is there anything in here that didn't make sense in what I presented? We're going to get to those larger questions, because I have questions too about how accurate this is post-COVID. But that's the question at the moment.
So I guess my comment is, I don't see us in any of these, because I see us kind of in a rebirth, which doesn't really fit any of these.
There are conversations about rebirth that we can have. We're not there yet. We need to assess where we're at first. Rebirth takes an intentionality. It doesn't just happen. So if you had to go by this, the question that we're going to do here is, in a second, is where do you think we are? Yes, go ahead.
I only heard the tail end of this, but I wanted to say that I think the overall kind of model makes sense. And I have questions about whether it's accurate.
Sure.
But I also see, I think the
That's later.
overview of it makes sense.
Yes.
That's later.
Yeah, so you asked history-wise. George Bulliard has been doing this for 30, 40 years. A lot of this core material has come from 20 years ago, but it's come in various forms as well. It's still used and active and continue to be researched by a lot of different people. The reformat in 2023 is just me retyping the document that our professor told us, or gave it to us, because I didn't like how it was formatted. So I didn't add anything, I just made it look nice. That's all it is.
Is there?
Go ahead.
I'll be honest, when I come in this morning, I realized, oh, that's what we're doing today. Oh, man, it's not too late to go. But being honest,
Put the makeup off of your mouth, please.
No, I don't put my lips on the mic. But I also talk fairly loud. But I think it is a good exercise to go through. No matter where you think we are, no matter what you think we need, I think we need to do it. No matter how healthy you think you are, right? You should go to the doctor every so often to find out something doesn't sneak up on you and kill you. All I was going to say is, I remember when Debbie and I first moved to Dallas, we went to a Richland Baptist church that we found that we liked. And it was great. It was a decent size. It had a lot of home groups. It had all kind of stuff going on. And man, it was plowing along, healthy as could be. Had Ken and Barbie for the pastor and his wife. Had a really good man and woman that was our, leading our choir. We had, 20 years later, we moved to Dallas again in like 2013. There isn't anybody left there. That church had been eaten by one of the big ones, and we went there to visit it when it was some other denomination now, and we watched church presented on the big screen that was, done some other location. So, if we don't do this, no matter what stage we end up with thinking we're at, if we don't pay attention to it, we might miss a diagnosis from a doctor.
Yeah, I mean, the purpose of both of these is, as challenging as that might be to us internally, if we don't know where we are at, we can't figure out where we need to go. If you're trying to drive from Wichita to McPherson and you think you're in Hutchinson, but you're not, you're going to have problems, right? That's all this is. So, you had a question.
Does this change depending on the size of the congregation? I would think that smaller churches and larger churches would have some different characteristics.
That's a good question. Oh, sorry. That's a good question that I'll take back to our class and have some conversation with everybody about. The thing that I would say about that is the size of a congregation changes drastically depending on where you're at in this life cycle. So there are some churches that may have been 500 at one point who are now 35. So is that a small or big church?
But there are also church traditions that are smaller.
Correct.
Just in their
Yes.
beginning.
The Church of the Brethren, denominationally, the average church size is 70. And that is for theological reasons. That's because the way we think about church does not generally allow us to have 1,000-member churches. So yes, that may be a different topic. Yes, Colby. Other questions about understanding this, and then I want to see some facts.
No, I think this is going to be a good ending thought on this concept, but I know that as you were talking about this, going to my educator brain, psychology brain, I saw a lot of similarities between Erik Erikson's 8 stages of development between this, and ironically there's 8 stages in both of them. So if you haven't heard of Erik Erikson and his concept of how people develop, and they've got different stages and they've got to overcome one to move on to the next, and they overcome another to move on to the next, that's a really interesting concept to compare this to, because a lot of similarities between that. So just to add to additional research, if you've got more, if you want to understand more of this, that's another good helpful resource to go to.
I want to be attentive to our time, so we're going to take about 2 minutes for everybody to grab the dots, find whatever color you would like. They are not color-coded anything. Head on up there and put a dot at whatever stage you think. Our congregation, not denomination, not Christianity in general, our congregation is at.
What do Michael sees where I put my dot?
Oh, I'm not gonna look. I'm not gonna look.
I'll let you touch. You're up, let me put yours up.
I didn't see
Anything. We did this years ago. When I said the other day, about the harnesses coming back to visit, maybe not, because we did this as a board 20 years ago.
Yeah, I remember.
And I remember Brian telling us, let's just sit, yeah, the church is dying, let's just enjoy watching it.
Want to be, where are we right
He
now?
said something to that
Question.
effect. I still remember. That was then, you know? Why do you get worried about it? Let's just enjoy it.
People again, their doors opening. So what, they're coming out.
Somewhere around then, but that's what I thought when they said that brought back to me that meeting we had that time. We were very similar as a board.
Yours was green? Yeah, put it right on top.
It was a job opportunity for her, I think.
But where do you want to push on this? I mean, you pick green sticker. This is primary attorney. Yeah, I'm gonna look the other, the option, you want to put it in spot. Quick design.
Yeah, as we begin to reflect on some of this, we're going to sing Guide My Feet,
And then we're here.
number 546. We're going to sing Guide My Feet.
And we won't worry about the literally all, we'll just say it all the way through.
Everybody sing together.
My
Assuming that I can be smarter than my computer. So, I'm not going to read your comments at the moment, but, nope. Not gonna do that here. Okay. We're going to have some just general reflection time about your thoughts on both of these responses and the questions here. But I promised you that I would show you, thank you, the results on this chart. Right-hand side are the 5s, the left-hand side are the 1s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So left hand is, this does not describe us. 5 on the right hand, this does describe us. Our congregation is clear about its identity, purpose, vision, and mission, and enthusiastically lives out the gospel in the local community and the world. Our congregation is generous with time, talents, and finances. Worship is meaningful and helps us deepen our relationship with God. By the way, there are 26 responses, so those are put out there. Yes?
Could you read the number at the highest one of each one of these so people have a sense of what number is kind of ranking the highest in each one?
Sure. Well, you want to know which answer is high?
You can see it visually, but if you can just name, like, 4 got 70% versus, like, that kind of thing, is that possible?
I might slow it down.
Yeah, we'll check it out visually. If you want to know more, come find me later. I want to have some time for reflections, and I'm aware that it's getting late. Question 4. The people and pastor join as a team, recognizing and respecting each other's gifts in pursuing the mission of the church. Our congregation displays passionate spirituality. Members of our congregation regularly invite others to attend church with us. Our congregation is hospitable toward and integrates new disciples into the body of believers. Question 8. The body of believers treat each other with joy, trust, and respect, and address differences through intentional conflict resolution. My apologies that there was not a comment section on that. That was not intentional. If you have comments to share, we would love to hear them at some point. The kind of structure of the church is such that our members have a voice when making important decisions in the life of the church. Our congregation makes decisions for mission and congregational life that are lived out in accordance with what they discern as God's purpose and vision for this church. Number 11, our church is a safe place for all ages and types of people, welcoming their ideas and thoughts in worship, in study, and leadership and service for Christ. Our church has a meaningful small group ministry for strengthening the community and equipping believers for service and witness.
Ta-da.
Those are the 12 questions.
How long did it take you?
Now, I'm going to be attentive to time and respect all of your time here. It is 11:58. I want to give about 5-6 minutes for reflections. This is the beginning of a conversation. Would you grab the light? This is the beginning of a conversation. This is assessment. At some point, we will continue conversation as a congregation about what might come next. But hopefully this is plowing of some ground and helping us do that self-reflection that we need to do, looking at ourselves better in the process. So, I'm curious about what your thoughts are on both of these surveys. And And also what your thoughts are on our congregation's thoughts. What strikes you about how we as a group are answering them? Roger has a microphone, I have a microphone, raise your hand, we'll bring it back.
What I see is that it's really hard to get out of your own personal experience and remember what's available. Whether I choose to participate doesn't mean whether it's there or not. And so taking responsibility for my own choices as I'm looking at this stuff is a big part of it.
It was interesting to me that I think we have a pretty good corporate view of who we are. I was interested in places that I rated as high, most people rated as high, and the things I rated as low, many people rated as low. So that was positive.
As I worked through that and this, I just found myself having a real grateful heart for our young adults in the church and keeping that fire going, keeping us aware of things out there, introducing new things. I mean, just that I'm so grateful for their fire.
I just saw a lot of overlap on this chart, that we were in some places, maybe we were in adolescent stage, but in other places we were in the mature stage. And so it was really hard to really pinpoint exactly where I felt like our congregation is.
I always struggle with these kinds of things because I get in my head a lot with this, because I'm always asking myself, am I answering how it truthfully is, or am I answering how I think it's supposed to be? So this is just me processing how I answered, but I think we all should be mindful of that too as we go through this conversation, because it is, I mean, it's something I struggle with a lot with these kinds of tests.
Self-assessment in general is really, really hard. And most of the time we're aspirational. Or we are harder on ourselves than is accurate. So being able to be honest and clear-headed is difficult. It's also one of the reasons why we do this in a group, because we can help, even in personal assessment, it helps to see ourselves through the eyes of other people and to share that.
So I just wanted to say one thing about, okay, I got the microphone key ready for 30 seconds to, here we go. So the model, I think, is helpful, and I really appreciate this process. I think it's important. I mirror what Myra said. It's very difficult. I struggle with this too. Answering questions truthfully, not how you're supposed to answer the question. I see this arch, or this kind of rainbow of a shape here on the page, as maybe missing half of its, yes, exactly. It's a cycle. It should be a circle rather than, or even a spiral, rather than just a beginning, ending, that's it.
So I have a thing about that. Yeah, so I purposely didn't say it until now, but as you might expect, this congregational life cycle stuff is not new information to me. I've literally been thinking about this for 20 years, okay? So I also get how it's shocking for some people, but this is not new information. part of what George Billiard would talk about in here, and what's important to know, is that the way congregational life cycles work is that when you get on that back side of it, you don't go back up the hill. Our temptation is to want to go back up the hill and to think, oh, we're at empty nest, but we want to try and get back to our prime. That's not how it works. I'm not going to be 25 again. Got it? Churches don't do that either. You're very right, though, Cody. What is not included in this so far is that the way churches continue on is that they have to start a new life cycle. And I said this last Sunday, remember, our core celebration, we are 1 week after Easter. Our thing as Christians is death and resurrection. Remember that. In order to continue on a new life cycle, there has to be a death, and I mean death, and then a new birth of vision, a new life cycle that can start after that. I'll give you one example of this. My home congregation of Alexanderville has a 300-year history over 3 countries and 2 continents. I've had long conversations with my dad, who's been church leadership, about this and has studied this stuff too, and the question has come up, how? That's like way too long for a normal church life cycle. And what he has observed is that about every 50 to 60 years in the life of that church, there has been some major event or revisioning of their identity. Sometimes it's the fleeing persecution and moving to a different country. Sometimes it is a world war. Sometimes it is an intentional choice to revision. But it's not the way that you can continue on as a congregation is by starting a new life cycle around a new vision and a new identity. So that's part of the research. I will also say, the farther you get down on that backside, the more drastic the death and rebirth has to be. It is not a given that you will start a new life cycle. That has to be hard, intentional work to do that. There are plenty of options. There are basically 3 options that when churches die, basically 3 ways that you can do that. 1, you can die in conflict and resentment with each other. I've witnessed that. 1, you can have an intentional death and rebirth. Some of you may have seen on Palm Sunday in the Wichita Eagle, the front page had a story about a church closing, taking 6 months to reorganize and then restart it. That, I went and bought the book and read it this week. The resources they're using is based off of this church life cycle stuff. So that is the most extreme version of it, and the most healthy of a death is to literally close the church, reorganize, and then restart. The third option, if you're going to hit the death stage, is life support. You can pitter on life support for a very long time. And I have a list of congregations in my head. So that's just to say, a new life cycle is not a given. It can be achieved even in the most extreme cases, and there is reason for hope. There is reason for hope, right? There's life here. This is not supposed to be depressing. This is a reality check, but there's reason for hope. So, thank you, Cody, for leading into my sermon that I wasn't going to share today.
So my comment is, almost everybody who's here today are the CoB attendees. And so I think we are susceptible to having our glasses all blue because we're so involved. We do, there are a few people who are more peripheral who might have a more accurate judgment of some of the things that we think we do well, but maybe we're not doing so well. And so I would hope that there might be opportunity for some of those folks to do the survey too.
We can certainly make the survey available. This has been the ongoing question of how to accurately assess that segment of the population, which is a challenge.
Are we, can I take a moment to explain a dot, or?
Short.
Just I can't help but kind of like measure our church against Christendom itself. And Christendom itself is on the way out and hopefully dead. That's my personal take. And once it is gone, that we become a more true church.
For the record, there's a difference between Christianity and Christendom. It's a real long pot of coffee. Talk to me about it, don't freak out. Go ahead.
You gave a sermon or two. You have brought it up on
Well, I've given that sermon a half dozen times here.
Half dozen times. So
I'll get it again.
And so yeah. So hence my dots down there on the infancy and everything, because I just feel like we're pups. I think we're like just learning right now.
Cool. It is 10 after 12. I don't want to shut anybody's comments off.
Thank you all so
Yes.
very much.
Cody's got another quick comment.
I just wanted to share that there's been a conversation happening around Song and Story Fest that I think might be worth just saying a little bit about this year. The fest is going to be happening in Peaceful Pines. Anyways, it's happening in a forest in California, but it pertains to what I'm trying to say. It's happening in a place where fires have happened. And so this conversation around fire is kind of have been central to the themes of the fest. I don't want to take a long time with this, but part of what is, I feel like is happening here, and I want to explain where Amos and I both put our dots on the congregational life cycle. I originally put mine at death. I'm sorry that may seem bold, but I felt like that was worth putting it there. Everybody was kind of avoiding that spot. And then Amos came over and he had one, and he was not sure where to put it. And I said, well, I was hoping he would put it at birth. And ended up that I kind of needed to do some little nudging and encouraging. I ended up moving mine to the birth part because I think that we need to look forward, we need to be positive. And he put his at the death because that's just kind of where there was space. but this metaphor of fire is so pertinent, I think, because when something gets burned, I mean, when a forest gets burned, fire is a natural part of the cycle, right? I used to work as a firefighter in Arizona during my summers between college to make some money, and I saw places that were completely burned, where there had been so much suppression of fire for so long that there was no chance for anything to live through that fire. The fire was so intense that it was incredibly destructive, and it leaves places, they call it moonscapes. It leaves them barren for long periods of time. So the Forest Service, this was 20 years ago, has started to realize that Smokey Bear was actually a little bit off in saying that, what is Smokey's motto?
But you can prevent a forest fire.
Yeah, you can prevent a forest fire. Forest fire is bad. It's bad. We should not have fire, right? And in Song and Story Fest, we're talking about disagreement. The metaphorical fires, like, we shouldn't disagree about things, we shouldn't argue about things, we shouldn't show emotion about things, we should just suppress all of our fire, all of our emotion. Well, in the world, that's taken the form of, it's pretty bad disagreements. So, anyway, those are some thoughts that come to mind. I think that we are at a death stage and we're at a birth stage. And that cycle is happening all the time in lots of different places. I'm encouraged. I think that there's really good things happening. Okay.
Preach it, Brother Cody. To continue our metaphor of fire, Church of the Brethren, one of our main main meeting times has always been around Pentecost. And focusing on the consuming spirit, fire of the Spirit. Oh, Ava, do you have one more thing?
Yes. About the life cycle, I bought one on Prime because people still grow, people still live, and if we are in death, we can produce and make new people. And we can, like, if we are in one area, we need a longer, so we can grow and live longer and stay at this congregation at church.
Amen.
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 Thank you. Amen.
Let's sing Move in Our Midst, and we'll stand together, number 418.
Have some grapes.
May the Spirit of God give us life, give us energy, give us hope. Go with us now from thy holy hill. Amen. Go in peace. If there are those of you who are interested in continuing some conversation this afternoon yet, I invite you to come on up here and we can hang out and talk.
See where we have
Okay.
Do you want to be here, or do you think we already are? You think we are?